Good evening. This is Defacto Review, a weekly analysis of Mongolia's latest political, economic, and social issues by economist and columnist Mr. D.Jargalsaikhan.
Hello, everyone.
And I'll be your host, Tikshirut. Today we're going to discuss the issues of fraud concerning foreign investors, the state of the Erdenes Tavantolgoi leadership, and the increase in prices of transport and energy. So this week, there was a meeting by the working group on protecting the rights of foreign investors in the Ministry of Justice and Home Affairs. And the minister of the ministry, Mr. Nyambata, presented information on this issue. He noted that it's not possible to attract more foreign investors without decreasing our corruption perception index and without protecting the rights of foreign investors. The working group on this issue was formed in 2021, and they reviewed 57 recorded cases by foreign investors. And of these 57 cases, 65% of them involved fraudulent activity. And the 2022 Mongolia Investment Climate Report by the U.S. Embassy found investors have acknowledged widespread corruption in Mongolia and leading some to curtail additional investments or to quit investing in Mongolia entirely. And there have been plenty of examples of fraud with foreign investors, such as the case of Max Johnson, who is the younger brother of the ex-prime minister of Great Britain, Boris Johnson, involving a 19 million investment in the Zaksaykhan mines in Mongolia. So this is a very important issue for our economy, as foreign investors are a big deal. And the bottom line is, how does Mongolia rebuild this trust between Mongolia and foreign investors?
Indeed, it's very important for foreign direct investment itself is very important for the current economic situation of Mongolia, where we practice now a shortage of foreign exchange. So the cabinet is trying their best to increase, first of all, our situation in corruption indexes, where we are now in 110th position out of 180 countries. Mm-hmm. And we were recently, just 6 years ago, we were in a much better situation. It was in 2016 we were at 87th situation. So many countries we are now behind. Mm-hmm. And what the Minister of Justice Nyambata said was very important, because now we are acknowledging the situation, in particular judiciary approach to foreign investors. Mm-hmm. And as you said, there's 57 fraudulent act cases or complaints about this situation. 20 cases out of them are closed. 12 are dismissed, 3 in the court processing, 4 cases are solved by the court, and 15 cases are still under investigation. And just to be clear about what's happening, just 2 cases I would like to highlight. One is what you have just now said about Max Johnson. What happened with him was, he's as you said, Boris Johnson's brother. He gave $19 million to a Mongolian partner, Mr. Boyan Tokhtokh, for development of a mine, as you have mentioned. But nothing has happened. So upon Mr. Johnson complaint, Mr. Boyan Tokhtokh was investigated and restricted from traveling abroad. Mm-hmm. But his judge cut that restriction for 1 day, during which he had left the country by Korean Air to the U.S. And now Mongolian authorities trying to get help from the U.S. authority to get that money back. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, Mr. Johnson said that it's one thing is clear, that the guy took the money, and 2 his executives of the company have been also investigated. Mm-hmm. And the things go and very much long-winded. Another case is that the minister have highlighted is the case of Japanese investor of Suruga Corporation construction company. What happened was in 2012, by the way, all these 57 cases are just for last 12 years. Mm-hmm. What happened was in 2012, this Japanese owner was found in a hotel room with drugs. Two persons who secretly left those drugs under his mattress were soon arrested, found, but somehow both acquitted by the Court of Appeal in 10 months. That's very weird case. Mm-hmm. Then the Japanese investor, so much scared, left Mongolia, left also his property, land. Mm-hmm. He was doing famous construction called Japantown. Some 5 buildings were made, maybe probably another 5 to be made. But that land somehow transferred to Mr. G.
So that land is concerning the land around the National Sports Stadium?
Yes, nearby. And that it's very expensive zone of Ulaanbaatar city. Mm-hmm. And the most important, that land is transferred somehow to the name of the Mr. G, who was a minister and also Secretary General of the National Security Council. Mm-hmm. So, in the case of this Boyan Tohtoh, and also in this case, very much high-ranking Mongolian government officials were involved in these cases. Mm-hmm. So these are really example of how much the judiciary system is working in the country. And the question comes with this kind of approach of judiciary system to foreign direct investment. Will Mongolia improve its situation? Will Mongolia attract foreign direct investment? So that's the question. But the minister does believe that his press conference about these 57 cases will help the judiciary system works faster, mm-hmm. and will have Mongolian public support in this regard. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's good that somehow these long-talk criminal cases are now being disclosed by the minister himself. Mm-hmm. It's good, and we need to support him in our hope, at least.
Mm-hmm. This was also an issue that was brought up by the Prime Minister last year, where he apologized to foreign investors personally. Right?
Yeah, he did, and this looks like this cabinet is trying their best to solve all of the issues in the past related to foreign direct investment and around it, and certainly to create such an environment of business governance inducing to more investment in Mongolia.
Mm-hmm. So aside from making judicial changes, are there any other ways to improve the situation? Maybe because there have been some proposals of tax breaks for startups. Would that apply for foreign investors as well?
There's another avenue of improving that foreign direct investment. Mm-hmm. Now, the current government is suggesting to have a special law protecting foreign investments' interests. Mm-hmm. But many oppose this idea because the foreign investors don't need special law for them. They just need stable, clear, understandable business environment. Mm-hmm. If this environment is created, doesn't matter foreigner or Mongolian investors, then it will be much better than to have a special law, because special law will require special enforcement, mm-hmm. which is going to be very expensive. So I am for having just better conditions, not special law for foreign direct investment.
Mm-hmm. So not specifically legislative action, but more creating a better environment overall for business.
It is, yes.
Let's move on to our second topic. The Erdenes Tavantolgoi state mine, which is a state-owned joint stock company that operates in the west Tsench region of the Tavantolgoi deposit, which is ranked 5th in the world in terms of its size. The total coal reserves of Erdenes Tavantolgoi, Tolgoi's licensed areas, of which there are 8, are estimated at 6.3 billion tons, of which 3.3 billion tons are coking coal and 3 billion tons are thermal coal. The CEO of Erdenes Tavantolgoi, Mr. Ganhoig, resigned from his duties last week, and following this, 5 executives were fired, and namely the head of human resources, the head of internal control risk management, the head of mining technology, the head of finance and investment, and the head of procurement, and also the head accountant were terminated from their posts. It is speculated that these people were found responsible for sending large amounts of money to other companies without reason. And these changes were made after a special regime was established for Erdenes Tavantolgoi by the government for a period of 6 months, and the government appointed the Secretary of the Ministry of Finance as its representative. So what should we expect to see within this 6 months of changes?
Well, at least the government is expecting even more, $500 million to be collected from the sales of coal by this company. The previous CEO was saying that maximum they can collect $300 million. Mongolian government needs a lot of dollars now, almost $2 billion for paying the previous bonds, interests and the principals next year. So plus now the country is, in a way, the Mongolian commercial banks restricting foreign exchanges, free move, or even they make a restriction for a day. For example, a certain amount you can only transfer from your account. So it is not good news because now the investors may think that Mongolia maybe impose capital flight, which is very bad news for investment. So hopefully it is not happening. But now the government needs this $500 million. They hope they will raise from the Erdenes Tavantolgoi. Plus, the emergency state was made also because just after several parliament members questioned for example, the Bank of Mongolia governor, and they was inquiring. They were asking questions about why a lot proceeds from the coal sales to China is not coming to Mongolia back as money, but instead they come as a construction material. So it's like coal for construction material, kind of natural, like barter trade, which is not good for payment of balance. The balance of payment. So they complained, and the central bank governor said that because this money goes to a company which is going to construct a thermal power plant in Amag. So because this questions and pressure from the several parliament members, I think all these things had started. And it is for 6 months, as you said, and hopefully by that time they will be able to raise $500 million. But there are 4, some says even 6, off-take agreement that signed by the previous Ganhoig, the CEO, and it means those off-take agreements, obligations from Mongolian side would not be priority now. The priority off-take means they have sold already, they got money, or agreed to get the money on the spot price, and maybe those off-take agreements maybe will be. Probably looks like delayed, which is not good for these 2 companies signed. Because it's a Chinese company, it is international agreement. It is not that easy to renegotiate international agreement. So that's the situation with the largest export earning machine of the government. And what's happening now with ETT, state-owned enterprises, are very typical. because even previous to my knowledge, at least 3 CEOs were investigated, criminally charged. One is even in a runaway abroad. So typical fate of state-owned enterprises where there is no proper and normal monitoring system set.
So within this 6 months, is the government expected to install new leadership, considering that, these people have been terminated from their posts?
Erdenes Tavantolgoi is almost 18% owned by the public of Mongolia. Every grown-up people, over 2,000 shareholders owns the share, and 80+% shares owned by the government of Mongolia. And they have a board, and that board had signed an agreement with CEO, but recently, because the government owns majority, they do whatever they want, and hopefully by that time we will have professional new CEO, which will come, I think, in more stronger terms, and hopefully, and I wish at least the same fate is not happening with that next CEO and his team.
So let's move on to our third topic. The prices for transport and energy have gone up by the start of this month. So the railway transport fees have increased by 20 to 50% from the beginning of this month, after Ulaanbaatar Railway's proposals to increase prices was accepted by the State Board of Trade and Industry. So transportation tariffs on coal exports have increased by 20%, and local and national passenger transportation fees have increased by 50%. Along with this, energy prices are also rising. Household electricity and heating prices will not increase, but for businesses, for enterprises that use up to 5,000 kilowatt hours per month will have their energy costs increased by 14%, and prices of power for enterprises exceeding 5,000 kilowatt hours will increase by 28%. So the reason for this is because the energy industry is expected to lose over 200 billion turugs, and this is according to the Minister of Energy. So what impact will this have for Mongolians, for everyday people?
Well, certainly it will have serious impact on the prices of daily consumption. It has been already impacting. Now, what is the reason behind of price increase for power? Is Mongolia has a limited, restricted tariff for consumption of electricity. The industry now, because the tariff is not changed since 2019, every 4, 5, 3 years they increase eventually a bit the tariff, but this time they had not done it. And plus, remember the economic difficulties due to the pandemic, they have not increased the price. Vice versa, even many household electricity consumption was paid by state-owned company. For example, Erdenes was paying, the copper mine, state-owned copper mine had paid the electricity bill for a whole year. So meanwhile, the industry, the whole energy producers, power stations, now have a total loss. For example, as you said, this year to be expected around 180 billion. Last year it was 78 billion. A year before 2019, almost 60 billion MNT loss. It's just energy sector.
So they're attempting to make up for these losses
because it's even more harder now to renew. The infrastructure is old. We need new turbines, etc. And otherwise, it will be a big loss for these companies. It already continued for many years. And plus, coal industry. And those, we have 3 mines around Ulaanbaatar city supplying coal to related power stations, because each power station is particularly designed for a particular type of coal. So altogether, they now run for the loss 2020. This year, they will have a loss of 110 billion MNT. So that's why these three major coal mines, Barnor, Shibawa, and Sharingol, suggested to increase their price 25 to 62%. It's a quite. Otherwise, they also have a problem with further production of coal. Also equipments, they were not able to replace them, and other related infrastructure. So, having that in mind, having the loss in energy sector, they suggest, for example, the following: increase of this price. Now the cost of 1 kilowatt energy is 224 tugruk. But the average price is 175. So just that gap is to be filled by 28% of power. But as you said, not households, but it's only for companies. And it's a problem because in normal economy, households are more customer and pay more overall than the companies. Now, in particular, those companies who has a high revenue, they will be paying more. So it may be definitely reflected in the prices. But what I think was maybe a higher price for energy may cause also very rational consumption of it, more economy, because you cannot pay all. If it's free, then you pay. You use a lot. That's one of the reasons why this price comes up in this sector. The other thing you have mentioned about the railways. Well, this is very serious questions. We said that they have increased, but very, very not substantial. It's only, for example, Ulaanbaatar Darkhan passenger ticket for one seat, 6,000 tugrik, now 9,000 tugrik. Not substantial. 9,000 at about less than $3 from Ulaanbaatar Darkhan, 220 kilometers. It is not substantial. Also, Ulaanbaatar Zamingud, it was 11,500 tugrik, now 17,000 tugriks. What, another $4 or $5. Ulaanbaatar Zamingud is even more further. So it's so cheap passenger tickets in Mongolia for railway. It's also because it's joint venture with Russian government, and Mongolians are especially subsidizing their price until today, and now they are in such a situation where they need to completely renovate their park of wagons, and so that they have to increase, and also they have to increase for some goods. For example, the copper concentrate, flour spar concentrate. For example, export price for power concentrate of transport is now 20% up. For flour spar and the iron ore, 15%. They have certain price indexes. So they hope that at least they will cover the cost. Nothing to say about profit. And really, this is the two major things I expect to increase prices, because the enterprises are producing goods, and not those goods are to be expensive now. The railway, Mongolian railway, runs with diesel, and diesel price have increased for the last 3 years, very substantial. For example, diesel price went up from $580 to $1,270. It's a 2.2 times increase.
So only 20 to 50% increase is not going to cover for the increase in diesel.
No, and plus the other goods, inflation, so much expensive diesel. As we know, the war have started in Ukraine, and the prices all around the world for fuel have increased. For Mongolia and around the world, diesel in particular, we 100% depend on Russia. And the diesel price, diesel is a production machine, food. A92 is a consumption, citizens, fuel. So the government have not increased that price, subsidizing, but the price for diesel have increased. Yet the price for diesel is for transport of food, everything all works for diesel. Even the Mongolian whole railway work. It's one of the few railways, by the way, in the world which works on diesel. Though we have a joint venture with Russia. The Russians have promised many years they will have electricity powered train, which is in vain now. We don't see that.
So I'd like to go to the question of increasing energy prices, right? Because you've touched on the point where not increasing household prices, but increasing the prices for energy for companies is going to drive up prices for consumption. So, for example, where you wouldn't have any changes in electricity prices in your home, you may have to pay substantially more money for services, for food. So, for example, restaurants may start charging more because of the prices in electricity. Is that safe to assume?
Yeah, all goods price will be increased because their costs are increased. And it depends on how energy intensive is the sector. If it's energy intensive, then definitely the cost will be increased. And then eventually the customer will feel the prices up. So two cases. One, some weak companies can be closed if there's too much energy consumption there. They would not afford it, particularly this time. Some companies will be more, I think, careful of their consumption. So it may cause also certain innovative things to make economy of the consumption of the energy, etc., etc. So there will be positive, negative changes. But at the end, prices to be free, because only free prices could make competition stronger, and it will bring the right information to consumers and the right information to market players. Otherwise, with the subsidized price, we cannot have right information. So wrong information comes. It is reflecting in your planning. So I think at the end, the price to be free. Otherwise we will not have. One day we completely cut out. So now question is whether you should have a little bit expensive power and still continue your life normally, or you have just darkness. Nothing works. And by the way, a Mongolian household is paying for their cell phone tariff 4 times more than their electricity per month. So it's a question. So I know if Mongolian prices are related to inflation and all this thing, it is really very low.
That is all for this week. This has been Defacto Review, a weekly analysis of Mongolia's latest political, economic, and social issues by economist and columnist Mr. D.Jargalsaikhan.
Thank you very much for watching us. See you next week. We will bring you the next 3 events of next week, again like this. Thank you very much for watching.